The news broke just this morning, and honestly, it felt like a global earthquake. Reports flying in confirmed that 3 really sensitive Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, were hit hard. Precision strikes, they're calling them, before sunrise.
Yeah, definitely not just rumors this time.
No, not at all. And the word is this was coordinated. Reportedly, Israel and the U.S. working together on this one. The fallout, well, it's been instant. Tehran is predictably furious.
Absolutely livid.
The whole Middle East feels like it's just simmering right on the edge. And if you've glanced online, you can't escape it. That phrase, World War III, it's everywhere. Sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it?
It really does. The speed at which that started trending was quite something.
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take those massive, complicated headlines, the ones that feel overwhelming, and we really try to get underneath them.
Cut through the noise a bit.
Exactly. Our goal is to pull out the crucial details, the insights you need, basically giving you a shortcut to being genuinely informed, especially when things are moving this fast.
Which they certainly are today.
Today, our mission is, frankly, incredibly vital. We're diving deep into this escalating crisis between Israel and Iran. And the big question, the one echoing everywhere, is this. Is this it? Is this the tipping point?
The point of no return.
Yeah. Are we about to see the Middle East explode in a way that pulls in global powers?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there still some path, maybe a tiny sliver of a chance, to pull back from the brink of something truly awful?
A huge question.
So, in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the headlines piece by piece. We'll go beyond the shock, the hashtags, try and understand the real gravity here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with the strikes themselves, what happened, where exactly. Then we'll look at the context, the long buildup of tensions that got us here. After that, the fallout, immediate and potential. Iran's promised retaliation. What could that look like?
Right, the different scenarios.
And finally, we'll explore any paths to de-escalation, however slim they might seem. Is anyone trying to pull this back? All based on the sources we've gathered for you, aiming for clarity in this incredibly complex, fast-moving situation. So let's start this deep dive. Let's really try to understand what's truly at stake.
Okay, let's do that. And it's really crucial, I think, to start by grasping that what happened wasn't just, an airstrike in the usual military sense.
Right.
According to our sources, this was designed as a message. A very loud, very dangerous message delivered with incredible precision.
Precision is the key word there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the targets chosen, they weren't random. The reports are very specific. Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan hit before sunrise.
3 key nuclear facilities.
Exactly. And the description used, that they were turned into fireballs, that paints a frankly terrifying picture. It implies not just damage, but complete incapacitation, at least temporarily.
That visual really sticks with you. It's just immense force.
It does. It conveys the scale of destruction, the perceived success of the mission from the attacker's perspective.
And the fact that it's described as precision and, crucially, reportedly coordinated between Israel and the U.S., that just elevates the significance massively, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It changes the whole dynamic.
This isn't just one country acting alone. It suggests a highly planned, synchronized, very deliberate operation. Now, when we talk about these specific locations, Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan, you said it was a message. How might that message land differently, say, for Russia or Saudi Arabia, compared to how Iran itself is obviously hearing it? What does hitting these places signal?
That's a great question, because the message is definitely layered. It sends different signals depending on who's listening. Let's break down the targets a bit. Fordo, that's the one buried deep inside a mountain near Qom.
Right, the hardened one.
Exactly. Designed specifically to survive conventional bombing. Hitting it sends a message about capability that even your most protected assets aren't safe. Natanz, well, that's the main enrichment site, the one everyone watches. Lots of advanced centrifuges there.
The heart of the enrichment program, really.
Pretty much. And Isfahan hosts the uranium conversion facility, the UCF. That's a crucial early step. It takes the raw uranium ore, the yellow cake, and turns it into the UF6 gas that feeds the centrifuges for enrichment.
So hitting all 3 isn't just poking, it's like going for the whole system.
Precisely. Targeting all 3 simultaneously, and apparently with such devastating effect turned into fireballs. It signals an intent to dismantle, or at least severely cripple, the entire integrated nuclear chain.
Wow.
For Iran, the message is blunt. Your nuclear ambition, the heart of it, is vulnerable. No part of your program, not even the deep bunkers, is out of reach. We can hit you where it hurts most. It's a stark declaration.
A very stark declaration. And how about others? Russia, China?
Well, for actors like Russia and China, this kind of strike, especially with reported U.S. involvement, signals a level of Western resolve that might complicate their own plans.
Who so?
It challenges maybe the perceived invulnerability of certain strategic assets globally. It could push them to condemn it more strongly, or maybe step up mediation efforts, depending on how they calculate their interests in regional stability versus challenging the West.
And the Gulf states, like Saudi Arabia.
For neighbors like Saudi Arabia, who are deeply worried about Iran's nuclear program anyway, this might feel like, well, validation of their fears, but also maybe a demonstration of a strong deterrent. It could reinforce their alignment with Western security umbrellas.
Okay.
But it also forces everyone globally, not just in the region, to rethink where the red lines actually are. This action suggests the calculation was that waiting, letting Iran get closer, was seen as a far bigger risk than this preemptive strike, despite all the dangers that come with it.
Which brings us right to that why now question. A strike this big, targeting the core of Iran's program. It doesn't just happen. Why now? Was Iran really that close to a bomb that this kind of, well, globally disruptive action was seen as the only option? What pushed things over the edge at this moment?
You're right, the timing is absolutely key. And no, this didn't just appear out of thin air. Our sources really emphasize that this is the culmination of years of escalating tension.
Right, not a sudden snap.
Exactly. Think of it less like a lightning strike and more like a fuse that's been burning shorter and shorter for a very long time. Several big things have been feeding this.
Like what?
Well, first, the collapse of the nuclear deal. The JCPOA, remember that? Agreed in 2015.
Yeah, the U.S. pulled out under Trump in 2018.
Precisely. And then Iran started rolling back its commitments step by step. That whole process just stripped away the diplomatic guardrails, the inspections, the transparency that were meant to limit the program and build trust.
So less visibility, more suspicion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without those checks, people, especially Israel, felt increasingly unsure, maybe even blind, to how fast Iran was actually progressing. The breakout time estimates kept shrinking. That lack of trust is corrosive.
Okay, so the deal falling apart is one big factor. What else?
Second, you've got the proxy wars. They're everywhere in the region, right? Syria, Yemen, Iraq.
Where Iran backs various groups' militias.
Right. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various militias in Syria and Iraq. These aren't just small skirmishes. They're constant, low-level, sometimes flaring-up conflict, where Iran and its rivals, including Israel and Saudi Arabia, are essentially fighting indirectly.
Keeps the whole region simmering.
Constantly on edge. It makes any direct action like this strike inherently much more volatile because the tinder's already dry everywhere.
Okay, so diplomatic breakdown, regional proxy conflicts.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, the rhetoric, just the constant exchange of threats. It's become almost background noise, hasn't it? Traded like tweets, as one source put it.
That's depressingly accurate.
Israeli officials constantly vowing to stop Iran getting a bomb. Iranian leaders firing back with threats against Israel and the U.S. This constant verbal war. It normalizes confrontation. It raises the temperature.
So you put it all together.
The dismantled deal, the proxy fighting everywhere, the nonstop threats. It really does feel like, yeah, it was only a matter of time before something major like this happened. The conditions have been ripe for a long, long time.
And within that context, that really tense atmosphere, we started hearing these reports, unconfirmed technically, but incredibly significant, about Iran's uranium enrichment. Specifically, the alarming idea that Iran had enriched uranium to near weapons grade. Now, that phrase, coupled with Israel's very public red line about Iran's nuclear capability, that seems like the immediate trigger, right?
It certainly looks like the flashpoint, yeah.
What does near weapons grade actually mean? How close is that? And from Israel's viewpoint, based on the sources, why act now on maybe unconfirmed reports instead of waiting for absolute proof or some international agreement? What's the strategic thinking there?
Right, that's the absolute crux of the immediate trigger mentioned. Near weapons grade usually means enrichment up to 60% purity. Some unconfirmed reports even suggested maybe higher, getting closer to the 90% uranium-235 needed for a bomb.
And normal reactor fuel is what, like 5%?
Typically 3 to 5%, exactly. So jumping to 60% is a huge leap. The crucial thing is the physics makes going from 60% to 90% much, much faster and easier than getting from 5% to 60%.
Ah, okay. So it drastically cuts down the breakout time.
Precisely. The theoretical time needed to get enough material for one weapon. So even if the reports were strictly unconfirmed, for Israel, Seeing enrichment potentially reach that 60% level, that crosses their long-stated red line. They've always said they won't tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran or even one right on the cusp.
So an existential threat in their eyes.
Absolutely. And their strategic thinking, as the sources suggest, seems to be rooted in this idea that they weren't going to wait for the world to debate it. They acted.
A sort of preemptive doctrine?
Yes. A perception, probably hardened over years, of seeing diplomatic efforts stall while Iran's program advanced, that the international community couldn't or wouldn't act decisively or quickly enough.
So they felt they had to act alone or at least initiate the action.
The calculation seems to be, once Iran has the actual weapons-grade material or demonstrates they can quickly make it into a weapon, it's too late. The whole strategic balance shifts. Any military action then becomes exponentially riskier. A nuclear arms race in the Middle East becomes almost inevitable.
So hitting the facilities now is about setting the clock back.
Exactly. A preemptive strike to significantly degrade the infrastructure, push back Iran's timeline, maybe by years, depending on the real damage by time, and forcefully reassert Israel's deterrent posture. It's a massive gamble, choosing preemption over waiting for clearer proof or consensus.
A gamble based on the conviction that waiting was the bigger risk.
That seems to be the perspective, yes, that their security demanded immediate, decisive action despite the huge risks involved in the strike itself.
But then there's this U.S. angle the sources highlight. It wasn't just Israel. The reports say coordinated by Israel and the U.S. That raises a massive question, doesn't it? How does the U.S. square its diplomatic posture with seemingly being involved in such a direct, high-stakes military action against Iran's nuclear sites?
It's a very pointed question, and the sources are quite suggestive here.
What does that coordination actually look like? And what kind of message does U.S. involvement send?
Well, the term used is joint coordination, and it's elaborated in a way that implies significant involvement, even if not direct U.S. military participation in the strike itself. The phrase was, maybe not boots on the ground, but definitely intelligence and targeting.
Okay, so not passive approval, but active help.
That's the implication. Intelligence sharing would mean providing things like real-time data on Iranian air defenses, maybe satellite imagery, signals intelligence. Crucial details about the layouts and weaknesses of those facilities, especially hardened ones like Fordo.
Information needed for a successful precision strike.
Exactly. And targeting assistance suggests collaboration on which targets to hit, where specifically to hit them for maximum effect, possibly even helping plan flight paths or suggesting weapon types needed to penetrate bunkers. This level of cooperation points to a shared assessment of the threat.
And a mutual decision to use force.
A mutual commitment, it seems, to address it kinetically when deemed necessary.
So what's the broader message then with the U.S. involved to that degree?
The sources frame it very starkly. This wasn't just about Israel sending a message. It was the West drawing a boundary in blood.
Wow, that's strong language.
It is. It suggests this isn't just one nation acting. It's presented as a sign of collective resolve, at least between the U.S. and Israel, to stop Iran getting nuclear weapons, even if that requires direct military action with all the risks that entails.
So for you, the listener, this isn't just Israel versus Iran anymore.
That's the critical implication. It potentially elevates this conflict. It signals that maybe previous red lines, the diplomatic or rhetorical ones, have been crossed, and now a physical, undeniable boundary has been set.
Meaning any further moves by Iran towards a weapon
would likely face severe, possibly military consequences. This act really does change the whole geopolitical chessboard in the Middle East and beyond. It sends a powerful signal to Gulf states, but also to Russia and China, about the seriousness of this commitment.
Okay, so we've had the strike, the message, the alleged coordination. Now, the focus shifts. The ball is in Iran's court. What's been their immediate reaction? Because you'd expect a vow of retaliation, right? Quick and forceful.
Oh, absolutely. And Iran's response has been exactly that. Swift, public, and completely unambiguous. They've promised full retaliation.
Full retaliation. Any specific wording?
Yes. The phrase quoted in our sources is decisive and unprecedented. That language is chosen very carefully, you can be sure.
Decisive and unprecedented. What do you read into that?
Decisive suggests they intend to act quickly, without getting bogged down in debate. Unprecedented implies something different, maybe bigger, maybe using different methods or hitting different targets than before, something designed to really shock.
A signal they intend to hit back hard, and maybe in ways we haven't seen.
That's the clear intention behind the words. And crucially, it's not just words. There are tangible signs of preparation already.
Oh, what kind of signs?
The sources specifically mention that missiles have already been moved. move from storage or fixed bases to potentially launch-ready positions or forward locations.
That's not theoretical, that's physical preparation.
Exactly. This is the kind of activity intelligence agencies watch very closely via satellite. It's often a direct precursor to a launch, or at least putting forces on much higher alert.
So for you listening, this means Iran isn't just talking tough. They seem to be actively getting ready to follow through.
Yes. The combination of that strong, specific language and these observable military movements is extremely concerning. It signals they are preparing to execute their promise, and the unprecedented nature means we should brace for potentially significant disruption.
Yeah.
Regional alert levels must be sky high right now.
Okay, so decisive and unprecedented retaliation is promised. Missiles are reportedly moving. That points towards a conventional military response, which is terrifying enough. But Iran often uses other methods, right? Asymmetrical warfare, proxies. What are the other ways they might hit back beyond just launching missiles? And what would the impact of those be?
You're right, the potential response isn't limited to conventional missiles. Iran has a diverse toolkit, often designed for maximum impact with maybe less direct attribution. The sources highlight a couple of major concerns here. First, there's talk of cyber attacks.
Ah, the digital battlefield.
Exactly. Iran has developed significant cyber warfare capabilities. They could target critical infrastructure, power grids, water systems, transport networks, maybe financial institutions.
Causing chaos without firing a shot.
Potentially widespread disruption and panic, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could target defense systems, try to blind or confuse military operations. And these attacks wouldn't necessarily be limited to Israel. Allies or even global systems could be collateral damage. The economic and psychological impact could be huge.
Okay, cyber is one avenue. What else?
The other major one mentioned is naval disruptions, especially in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, the oil choke point.
A vital one. The sources call it the lifeline of global oil. About a fifth of the world's oil, plus a lot of natural gas, goes through that narrow strait every single day.
So any disruption there is a big deal globally.
A massive deal. If Iran were to try and mine the strait, harass tankers with their fast boats, use coastal anti-ship missiles, or even directly confront naval forces, the economic shockwaves would be immediate and catastrophic.
Not just regional, but hitting everyone.
Absolutely. Any disruption there hits every economy, as the source puts it. You listening right now would feel it. Skyrocketing gas prices, supply chain chaos for all sorts of goods, inflation spiking, markets tanking. It's a direct line from regional conflict to global economic pain.
Okay, cyber attacks, naval disruption.
Yeah.
What about the proxies?
That's perhaps the most dangerous scenario in terms of escalation potential. The threat of Iran activating its network of allies like Hezbollah or militias in Syria.
Hezbollah in Lebanon is heavily armed, right?
Extremely heavily armed. Not just a militia, really a powerful non-state army with tens of thousands of rockets and missiles, many precision-guided, capable of hitting anywhere in Israel. Then you have Iranian-backed militias in Syria, in Iraq.
All potentially activated.
That's the fear.
No.
Unleashing them would instantly turn this from a mostly Israel-Iran fight into a much wider regional war. It becomes, as the sources say, a regional powder keg.
Not just two countries anymore.
No. You'd have multiple fronts opening up simultaneously. Lebanon, Syria, possibly Iraq. And the real danger there is miscalculation. One miscalculation, one wrong missile, maybe fired by a proxy group, maybe hitting the wrong target, could trigger an uncontrollable chain reaction.
A counterstrike, then another counterstrike.
Exactly. And suddenly you could see the entire Gulf region in flames. It's this complex web of alliances and proxies that makes the situation so incredibly volatile. Each actor adds another layer of risk, amplifying the potential for things to spiral out of anyone's control. The consequences would be devastating.
It's genuinely chilling when you lay it all out like that. The potential for cyber chaos, economic strangulation via Hormuz, a multi-front regional war sparked by proxies. And yet, as you're describing this immense gravity, the online reaction has been, well, almost surreal. You see people joking, World War III is trending. It's become this dark meme almost, a way to cope maybe. But listening to you detail the actual mechanisms of potential conflict, this isn't a meme, is it? We need to get past the online noise.
No, it absolutely is not a meme. And you've hit on something important. The internet often uses humor, detachment, to process things that are just too scary to confront directly.
Right.
But this is real. Terrifyingly real. The scenarios we're talking about, kinetic strikes, economic warfare hitting every household, regional proxies igniting multiple wars, these have the potential for consequences that ripple far, far beyond the Middle East.
It's not contained.
Not at all. Think about it. Choking global oil supplies impacts everything, everywhere. Cyber attacks hitting critical infrastructure, banking, healthcare that could cause systemic failure affecting millions, billions. A multi-front war in an already fragile region means massive human suffering, refugees, further instability.
The ripple effects just keep spreading.
They'd be felt in every capital, every market, ultimately, yes, every household. The online jokes, understandable as a coping mechanism perhaps, they risk dangerously trivializing the actual stakes. This is a moment demanding serious, grounded attention, not just fleeting commentary. History is full of regional crises spiraling out of control because the interconnectedness or the potential for miscalculation was underestimated. This feels disturbingly similar.
Okay, so given that terrifying potential, that interconnectedness, let's turn to the absolutely crucial question. The one everyone hopes has a positive answer. Is there any chance left for de-escalation? Or are we locked in now? Are there any diplomatic lifelines still out there?
It's the vital question, isn't it?
Right.
And honestly, the window seems incredibly small.
Tiny, but not zero.
Not zero. That's the crucial part. It's fragile, easily slammed shut, but there is a window, according to the sources. They indicate that some countries are reportedly pushing a ceasefire deal behind the scenes.
Ah, so quiet diplomacy is still happening.
It seems so. Even while the rhetoric is fiery and the military moves are visible, there are still back channels being worked. Quietly. Away from the spotlight.
Any idea who was involved in these efforts?
The sources specifically mention Turkey, Qatar, and China as potential mediators.
Interesting mix. Why them?
Well, each has different relationships and leverage. Turkey has regional influence and history. Qatar has often played the intermediary role in the Gulf. China has huge economic interests, mainly energy and Middle East stability, and wants to avoid disruption to global trade.
So a sign that the wider world is deeply worried.
Absolutely. Their involvement shows a broad international recognition that this path is incredibly dangerous. They're likely using whatever diplomatic tools they have, economic links, political ties, quiet persuasion to try and urge both Israel and Iran to pause, to find an off-ramp before this spirals completely. It's a sign of the immense global anxiety that these efforts persist even now.
It's something, at least knowing those talks are happening. But for any ceasefire to work, even start, both sides have their demands, right?
Yeah.
What are the big sticking points? What do Israel and Iran fundamentally want that makes finding common ground so hard, even with mediators?
Exactly. Mediation is one thing, but bridging the core disagreements is another, and they are deep-seated. For Israel, the absolute core demand, consistent for years, is they want Iran to stop enrichment, period.
Uranium enrichment. Tied directly to the nuclear weapon fear.
Directly. Any enrichment, especially towards higher levels, is seen as an unacceptable step towards a bomb, an existential threat. From their perspective, it's non-negotiable. They see it as a red line needing kinetic enforcement if crossed. Their whole security doctrine is built around preventing that.
Okay, so Israel wants enrichment stopped. What's Iran's bottom line?
For Iran, the equally firm counter-demand is Iran wants sanctions lifted. Those comprehensive economic sanctions, mainly from the U.S. and allies, have absolutely hammered their economy.
Oil sales, banking access.
All severely restricted. For Tehran, lifting sanctions isn't just about economics, though that's huge for their people. It's about sovereignty, respect, ending what they see as illegitimate economic warfare designed to cripple them. They view their nuclear program as a right and the sanctions as unjust punishment.
So enrichment versus sanctions, that sounds fundamentally opposed.
It is. And that's the heart of the problem, summed up neatly by the sources. No one wants to blink first.
A high-stakes game of chicken.
Precisely. Both sides feel they can't afford to look weak. Israel feels it showed resolve with the strike, and stopping enrichment is essential for security. Iran, having been hit militarily and suffering economically, sees lifting sanctions and getting security guarantees as fundamental before they concede anything, especially after this attack.
So these demands are just massive hurdles for diplomacy.
Monumental hurdles. Each side sees giving in on the other's core demand as surrendering vital leverage or compromising on national survival or sovereignty. That's why the impasse is so deep. And that's why, even if they manage a temporary pause, the underlying conflict remains, making lasting peace incredibly difficult to imagine right now.
Which brings us to right now, the immediate future. These next few hours, maybe days, feel absolutely critical. If there is that tiny, fragile window for de-escalation you mentioned, what does the time frame look like? What are we watching for actions or maybe inactions that tell us which way this is heading, brinkmanship or backing down?
The sources are really clear on the urgency here. They state it plainly. The next 72 hours are everything.
72 hours? 3 days? Soon.
Very soon. It's not hyperbole. It's the window where the immediate reactions play out, where shock either hardens into retaliation or allows for a moment of calculation, of restraint. The choices made in this period will likely set the course.
So what's the best case scenario we're hoping for in these 72 hours?
For de-escalation, the best case is simple but requires immense restraint. If there's no second strike, no counterattack, maybe there's hope.
Meaning Israel doesn't hit again, and crucially, Iran holds back.
Exactly. Despite the vows of unprecedented retaliation, despite the missile movements, if Iran chooses significant restraint, maybe a very limited symbolic response, or none at all, that triggers a major Israeli reaction within this 72-hour window.
Then maybe diplomacy gets a breath of air.
It could provide that desperately needed opening for the mediators, Turkey, Qatar, China, to gain some traction. It would signal a kind of unspoken, precarious, mutual desire to avoid all-out war, a very thin thread of hope.
Okay, that's the hopeful path. What's the worst-case scenario in these next 72 hours?
The worst case is equally stark and feels, unfortunately, quite plausible right now. But if Tehran launches missiles, or Tel Aviv is targeted, this could turn into something the world hasn't seen in decades.
Launches missiles directly, or via proxies.
Either a significant barrage from Iran itself, or maybe more likely, a major attack orchestrated via Hezbollah from Lebanon, or militias in Syria. If major Israeli cities like Tel Aviv or critical infrastructure are hit hard.
Then Israel retaliates again, presumably harder.
Almost inevitably. An Israeli counterstrike would likely be swift and possibly much broader, targeting more Iranian military sites, IRGC bases, maybe even leadership targets in an extreme scenario. The cycle accelerates very fast.
And something the world hasn't seen in decades. What does that imply?
It implies a large-scale conventional war involving multiple countries in the region, potentially drawing in the U.S., maybe Russia, China getting involved indirectly. A multi-front conflict across the Levant and the Gulf, far bigger than recent wars there. Think Iran, Iraq war scale, maybe Yom Kippur war regional impact, but with modern weapons in a more interconnected world.
It's truly a knife edge, then, these next 3 days.
Absolutely. It feels like a binary choice is unfolding.
Yeah.
A tiny chance to pull back versus a very real possibility of a rapid, uncontrolled slide into widespread conflict with global consequences. The whole world is watching, holding its breath.
We really are witnessing history unfold, not in books, not in archives, but right now, on our screens, in our news feeds, maybe keeping us up at night.
Yeah.
In times like this, understanding feels more important than ever. So stay aware, try to stay grounded in the facts, look past the noise, the sensationalism, because in this interconnected world, a strike somewhere like this sends ripples everywhere. Understanding isn't just academic, it's how we navigate this. It helps us avoid panic, have informed conversations. It's crucial.
And maybe prompts us to think about a difficult truth. The price of silence or disengagement in moments like this. Sometimes it's war, something to consider. You've been listening to The Deep Dive. As events continue to unfold over these critical hours and days, we'll keep tracking the situation, trying to provide context and clarity. We'll be watching, and we'll be back, if the world still lets us.